Strong. Welcome to Creatively Strong interview here on Songwriting with Soldiers Facebook page. I am Mary Judd, the co-founder and program director. I am so excited to be joined today by one of our longtime SWS alumni veterans, Josh Geartz, who is also our outreach coordinator and will be helping with more of these interviews in the future. Hello, Josh.
Hi, Mary. Hi, Chris.
And we are also here with our special guest today, retired Colonel Chris Rem. She is a retired Army nurse, not Air Force nurse, correct? Army nurse.
Army nurse, yep.
I will let Chris do her full introduction here. I know Chris from our Songwriting with Soldiers retreat in 17 in upstate New York. And we'll be hearing more about Chris's experience at that Songwriting with Soldiers retreat and her incredible creative journey since then. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Chris to give us just a little bit of background about herself and how she found Songwriting with Soldiers. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
Oh, thanks, Mary. Thanks, Josh. Hi, everybody. As Mary said, I'm an Army nurse. I joined the Army Reserve in 1982. I was a late bloomer, just like some people go back to school in later life. Let's say I'm a later veteran, so I'm a little bit different than I was 32 when I went in instead of a young person. And I had 30 years of combined Army Reserve and 6 years of active duty. Most memorable is that I had a year tour in Ramadi, Iraq from 2007 to 2008 as part of President Bush's surge into Iraq. And my current status is that I am retired and a veteran, and but I'm still serving. That's this little catchphrase in my group, my Art for Vets group with Penny. And this year's theme for our art programs is still serving. And so my project has been a long journey, and it really fits that motto, still serving.
It's inspiring, and we will ask you more about that. Definitely want to hear about that because I know your organization's doing some incredible work serving many people.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your Songwriting with Soldiers experience.
Okay, and this really has come full circle too, Mary, as you'll know as I'm talking. But it was really kind of serendipitous, the whole thing. It was really kind of like a dream. It happened very, very quickly. I had heard about Songwriting with Soldiers, I'm not sure where, but at the time I was an adjunct faculty at Russell Sage College in Troy. And one of the professors that I worked with, her name is Dr. Madeline Cafaro, and she belongs to an organization called 100 Women Who Care. And in 2017, just a couple of days before the retreat, or maybe a week or so before the retreat, I received an email from her saying, "Oh, Chris, I just wanted to touch base with you. We picked this organization." As you know, she told me a little bit, and she said, "You're a veteran. Have you heard about this?" And I said, "Yes, I've heard about it." And I didn't realize there was like anything local or anything. I said, "Do you think you could ask the lady if I could email her and tell her I'm a veteran?" And she said, "Okay." So she somehow arranged that I was able to email you. And I emailed you and gave you a little bit about my background, and you wrote right back and said, "I have one opening left." Now that's really coincidental, but it was like I only had a couple of days to prepare to get there. And if you hear my dog barking, I have one dog now, but I used to have 3. And I had, so I had to arrange to get to the retreat, which I did. And I met Josh there right from the very beginning, and inspired by previous stories and just, hearing you talk. But I came kind of breathless. I was kind of rushing. I was a little late when I got there. But I had thrown, when I packed, I had thrown a little little notebook that I had carried in my pocket when I was in Iraq, where I had jotted down this story that I thought would make a perfect song. Okay. So then I get to the retreat and I find out I'm not really supposed to be thinking about it before I got there, but I didn't even know, but I had this little story, and I thought that I really wanted to share that because I didn't know what else I was going to talk about. I wasn't prepared for anything when I got there. So when I say that it's come full circle, is that I was just recently selected by 100 Women Who Care to receive their this quarter's donation. And so I have, Madeline continued to put my organization in from 2017 to now, and we actually just got selected. So it's a very, very small world, and it's very interesting. So when I got to the retreat, and we met the first night, and I really, this was 2017. So from the time that I come back from Iraq in 2012, or pardon me, in 2008, and then subsequently I did 2 years in Little Rock, Arkansas as a nursing case manager and working on SRP teams. And I retired in 2012. So between those years, I really always, when people asked me, I would start to tell them a little bit, and their eyes would seem to glaze over, and they would then maybe change the subject and talk about not change the subject about me, but talk about another service member and their family or something, and then laugh and cut the conversation quick. And so I learned to not say too much. And then I wasn't really quite sure what I could share and what I could tell other people. And those were the years that I started to begin to feel kind of isolated from other people, that I couldn't click with them. And that's part of my song, but I could not connect, and I didn't know how, and I didn't want to say the wrong thing, and I didn't want to make anything look bad. And I was just very, very cautious. I was a colonel. I think that Josh will pick up on this, because when I met Josh, he was like, "Oh, I can't wait to hear your song," and I was like, "Oh God, I'm just different. I'm older, I'm high ranking, I'm female, my service is different." So I think what happened was, after the retreat, I'm jumping ahead, but after the experience of the retreat, it helped me become more comfortable with sharing my story. And that's been a slow process, but I've gotten more and more comfortable with sharing my experience and connecting with other veterans. So it was just another step in the road of helping me connect with veterans, with other veterans, and then with people who are not veterans, and to share my story. And I always love music. I love to sing. I sing in the Saratoga Veteran Chorus. I always listen to music. And so that's a real part of me that makes me feel happy. It's my happy place, music. So I was really excited, and to meet these professional singer-songwriters. So the retreat is, you come, and people know this who are members, but you come on a Friday, or whatever day the retreat usually starts, and we have to meet later in the evening, and then we have a full day and then a half day. So everybody was Mary was teaming up everybody with their singer-songwriters, but I didn't get teamed up right away. So I was getting a little, apprehensive, and but it did give me a chance to hear them sing and talk and stuff like that. And I really felt like I wanted to write my song with Maia. I kind of felt like that if I talked to her, it would be easier because she was a woman. I wasn't quite sure, but there was something about Maia that I decided. And so I kind of very delicately asked you if that would be okay if I could select my songwriter. And then you said, okay. So on Saturday, all the people but two wrote their songs. And then we had a kind of little pre-conference that night. And everybody was like, so connected. And I was like, oh my God, I still have to write my song and this is going to end like around noon tomorrow. Josh wants to know what I'm going to be, what my song is going to be. He's smiling at me and giving me kudos and saying, oh, I can't wait to hear your song. And I said, oh God. So when I met with Maia on a Sunday morning, I had my little notes and things. I had pictures that I wanted to share with her. But the point I'm making is that when I told her the story and then talked more, because we spent like 3 hours together, if not more. And the first verse is about the story, but the other verses more are about what I'm trying to convey. And what I was trying to convey was that there are certain times in your life where someone is trying to convey a story to you, and all of a sudden they might be sitting there kind of bored, they might have their phone, they might be fidgeting, they might be moving around, and they look like they're a little bored, but all of a sudden when you share that story, they all of a sudden look at you and they see you. Mm-hmm. With the song, they hear you. And with the emotion of the guitar, and especially the way Maia sings, it really conveys your story. And so she got that in the second part, but when I talked about working with veterans, and that when I came into the room, nobody was talking until I said I saw it too. And then they would look into, they would look into my eye, and they would understand that I understood, and it would break down barriers in a minute, in a finger snap. And so she captured not only a little bit of the story, which draws you in the beginning, because it's not exactly what you think it's about. And then she goes on to tell, how meaningful this song was to me. So Mary, you had talked about this before, Mary, when we talked, but after I had that experience, then we go to the final concert and everybody gets to hear everybody's song. And, all of us, and I was like, just sitting there and wondering, how are they going to accept my song? And it was really a very emotional moment, because they all of a sudden went like this, and they looked down the row and they went, oh my God, and it's like, okay, it's now the end of the retreat. And all of a sudden now people see me more than perhaps when I first entered the room or whatever, but now we had a bond where we could share things. So I couldn't not try to become more involved. And that's why I asked you to be a volunteer, because I get a fix. I get my fix by being able to just be around, go to concerts, hear the music, hear the other stories, which sometimes I think, oh my God, I could have written that song. All right. And it's somebody else's story that's exactly the same as mine. And so I have been, very much influenced by this program. And I wrote this, so then I eventually wrote this little story up in more detail and submitted that to Saratoga County Veteran Peer-to-Peer Program, and they put that in a little book of veteran writings. And then I got even braver, and I decided to submit to the Albany VA's arts program. Every year you get to submit, and it goes to all across the United States. And so Albany picks who they're going to have, and then you either you sing, or you play music, or you read, or you submit a writing, or whatever. So I was like in 4 different categories. I submitted the story. I sang the song a cappella.
Bravery going all over the place here.
Oh my God, I sang the song, and then I read the story, which was a dramatic thing, and then I had to do this thing like with drums. That was like something from the 60s. Include her as a This was the lady at the VA. But anyway, I was in 4 categories, and then Albany, I came in first in 3 of the categories. So it was, it just continued from there. And I go to a lot of different, I go to a lot of different veterans groups, and I try to stay active in all the different types of creative arts. And then on the side, I have for a long time been trying to get this house open as so anyway, that is, I asked, make sure I got everything I wanted to say about this, about the retreat. Okay. And Josh liked the song. He was good job. Colonel.
I remember a lot of people, like you said, truly looking down the row and finding you and just making that connection, because we have what Kevin Reeder, who's part of our community, you all know, he calls it our PSA, which is post-songwriting acceptance. That thing that happens after you're so nervous about putting your story out there. And then in this context, when you can put it to a song with someone else and having other people who your peers or people that you feel like you want them to hear your song, and what both of you have done, and many in our program, just braving it, the process, and trusting it, and just being honest and writing your song. Now you see how many other people relate to it. First ring right around you is your fellow veterans. Absolutely. And then I would imagine, because I know I've been there, that you've both seen it relate to people who are not veterans, whether they're military families or they're civilians who haven't been. They will relate to something in it that just touches their. So you're connecting with people on a lot of different, really important levels. Thank you. Thank you for that really beautiful reminding tour of that retreat, Chris, too, and your process. I always like to remind everyone our mission of Songwriting with Soldiers is to use that collaborative songwriting to build creativity, connections, and strengths. And your story, what you just told us, your experience, I think it just exemplifies that, the creativity that you have expanded upon since you were at that retreat is so inspiring. And it's fun to see you tell your story and be so excited about it still, all that you've done and the connections that you've made. And also the connections that you've sparked in more people is really obvious. And the many strengths that you bring to your work, your huge generosity with your time that you've given us and so many other people, your creativity, your sense of teamwork, your humility. I mean, I see that with both of you so much. Could write a whole book about the strengths that are in action with you. So tell us about, before I hand it over to Josh, I'd just like you to tell us about what you said. You brought up the house that you've been wanting to build for a while. And for those who don't know you, tell us what that is and what it's called and why it's called that. Just a brief description, and then tell them where we can find more information about it.
Okay, well, I'll just start out with it. You can go to my website, www.cdwv.org. That's Capital District Women Veterans. That's what the CDWV is. And I have a web page right now. I thankfully had a woman to help me. I got some good people along the way, because basically I have been, marching this road by myself a good portion of the time. And now things are fine. The momentum is finally picking up. And I think we're going to be open by, I'm praying we're going to be open by Veterans Day. So, all right. Capital District Women Veterans Program is a New York State not-for-profit 501c3 tax exempt organization. The house was a family house. I bought, originally we bought the house in around 2005. I had been on a tour to Germany, Würzburg, Germany from 2004 to 2005. And during that time, the last of my aunts, elderly aunts, who was the only person living in the house at the time, was placed in a nursing home. And so I asked my mother to wait till I got back because nobody else wanted the house, but I thought it would be perfect as a community residence. At that time, I was just thinking women and children. Most of my nursing background has been in maternal child nursing. So my focus was women and children. That was the first thing. So the house is a house in Troy, New York. Troy's called the Collar City. For those of you who don't know, it's the capital district. Albany is the capital, and they call Albany, Troy, and Schenectady the capital district. And it's very old-fashioned architecture, similar to like New York City. You've got these rectangular brick buildings. And one picture that I think you're going to post, you'll see me in front of it, and you'll see me in front of it with the ribbon cutting. But it was built in around 1898. My grandparents, who were immigrants from Poland, where there's actually a Polish American club 2 doors down. Back in the day, back at the, in those days, I'll say 1920, because that's when they moved into the house. But in the 1920s, Troy was a very ethnic diverse town. So you had your Polish in one area, and then your Italians and your Irish, and so there was a whole little Polish community there. They had a Polish club. My grandparents lived upstairs over the club, had 5 children, and then in 1920 they moved into this house, bought this house. They subsequently had 4 more children. There's only 3 still living now, one of which is my mother, who will turn 96 in early October, and 2 of my uncles who are retired veterans. All of my uncles served in World War II. And so I was raised around them, and I was very much influenced by them. So the house was an older house, and I bought it around 2004, 2005. Originally, one of my sons lived in it. There were a lot of college kids that kind of roomed with him. It really was kind of a boarding house, the way I was kind of envisioning it. But I was on active duty. I was still on active duty. I went to Iraq. I was on active, then I was in Little Rock, Arkansas. My husband was on active duty in Florida. He was also an Army nurse, and he got very sick in 2010, and he was in a medical hold unit. Now, I was the one who went to Iraq. He didn't go to Iraq. He was stateside. But as nurses, you learn that the schematics and the levels of care and how things are supposed to go is the same as whether you have a car accident on a base stateside or in Germany, or if you're injured in Iraq. So care of the patient is very, very similar. So, but I learned a lot more from the lived experience from caring for him at the same time that I was still on active duty. So he was in that process for 2.5 years. Ideally, nurses will tell you that within 18 months, we should have the patient medically discharged, transferred to the VA, and on with their life, or healed and back to duty. All right. Well, I learned a lot about how slow this process can be. And I saw firsthand how it affected not only him, but other people. And so I became very interested in that. And then that interest led to being involved with veterans afterwards. But in 2012, he passed away while he was still on active duty. So the house is Christopher House. And because he was helping me right up, and after buying it in 2004 or 5, he helped me straight through the process of getting the ideas. And I started, this is when I learned about the Veterans Homeless Provider Program. And one of their top initiatives was women veterans. And it was right around 2009 that I decided that it was going to be the primary population served was going to be the women veteran. And that's how that kind of evolved. So until 2012, when I retired, and then later that year when he passed away, it was still kind of a dream. And I never realized, I can tell you now, it's been a long haul, but I have learned so much. And maybe I can help somebody else along the way, because I didn't get a lot of the real story, okay, until you were in the depths of it or whatever. So it really started going around 2016, 17, around the same time that I went to the retreat. And but it had to be renovated. You have to receive a certificate of occupancy from the city in order to open what's called a supportive community residence. Because it's not a private home. I'm not a private landlord. I'm going to be offering services here, and I'll be, seeking grants and things like that. So I went to the planning board and I got approval from Troy. And then I got architects I had the architectural redesigns done over like 4 times to try to save money. And then finally, we were trying to come up with I pursued grants. I pursued all different avenues to try to raise money. I looked into the VA. I didn't fit the criteria. It always was like I didn't fit the criteria just a certain way. So we just continued to march along. And then when the pandemic hit, I had a lot of thoughts that, and I'm getting older, and I felt that this is do or die. I'm going to make this happen. And then the money, we'll seek the money. Okay. But I have to prove that we're going to get open. We have to start getting people in here. And then I'm hoping that we'll be able to be self-sustaining, and we're going to, because everybody's question was, how are you going to keep this open? How are you going to maintain it? How is this going to happen? But I really just do short term. Let's get to this, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Oh, and okay, so she just put up a picture there. That was June 19th this year, 2021. Got a lot of our local politicians there, and we had the ribbon cutting. What the ribbon cutting signified was that we have the certificate of occupancy from Troy. All the structural, fire, safety, everything is okay. But what we still didn't have was, like, we had to still get furniture. We have to get window things, little curtains and blinds and stuff. And so there's still things to be done. And they are all, I just got selected by 100 Women Who Care. That was major. That should push us right to being able to open. There'll still be things to be done, but the critical stuff will be done by then. So when the pandemic came and I started really thinking about, I just want to throw this in, is that I started to think about my grandparents. I have done some ancestry work at times when I have a spare minute, but I started to think, how did they didn't speak English. They had all these children, they were poor. How did they buy a house in 1920? And how did they survive the first pandemic here in the United States? And if they could do it, then I certainly can do this. All right. So that was a real inspiration to me. And so what I learned was that they did survive through the first pandemic. They had 5 children when they bought the house in 1920, and life was pretty good for them in 1920. But then the Depression hit. And then my grandfather had a stroke, and then the children all kind of started pitching in. And, then the war came in the 1940s, and, but I saw this, I don't own it anymore. I turned it over to the business, but I'm still in it. I'm the one doing most of it. And so this house is still surviving 100 years later. And they made it through all those adversities back then. We're going to make it through these adversities now. And that became my driving force.
Wow.
And that is, and we did it. And it's very close to having people living in it. So, and
Well, you have to keep us all informed. I mean, post on our page, and I know a lot of people will be really, really curious and inspired, by how you've done it, what you're doing. I know Josh has some questions for you too, Chris, but it's so inspiring. Thank you for everything that you've done in so many ways, and especially for sharing this so detailed. I mean, you're such a good storyteller too, but you're thorough, and we're getting a full view of what's the inspiration and some of the challenges. So Josh, what questions do you have for Chris?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it when we talked about it a little bit before we went live, but you talked about setbacks and how you look to your relatives for some inspiration. What are some other things that you look to, or things that you do when you face those setbacks, when things aren't going the way that you expected or hope them to go?
Well, like I said, I was a late bloomer. So I have many years of facing setbacks. And that helps me. The issue becomes, and how do I convey that to someone much younger than me? Okay. So, because everything has been slow and hard. And you just have to, you have to find those things that make you happy. Okay. And that bring you, because if you get so down and out about it all, you can't be creative. This house is my palette. I'm creating this house. Okay. I can't do that if I fall into this is not going to work. It's awful. Things are terrible. So I have to continuously find ways to try to make myself stay positive. And I find that through, as a veteran, I find that through being involved in as many veterans events, groups, activities that I can be a part of and network with people. And Songwriting with Soldiers is very, to me, as a music lover, really inspires me, keeps me going, keeps me wanting to stay in the thick of it, because I just feel that there's something that it will succeed. And if it doesn't succeed with me, it'll succeed with whoever picks up the torch after I'm gone. As I get older, I start to feel that way, because people are like, well, you're not going to live forever, and how are you? And so I say, whatever. I say, I know that there is young veterans out there who will want to take this on. I just know that. I just feel that in my heart, and whatever happens, happens. But in order for me to stay motivated, I have to go to fun, inspiring, communal activities. That's what helps me to try to keep focused and not to give up. And I was thinking about that. I watched those couple of the videos I told you, Mary, to try to get a feel for this talk. And I think that's what that Dr. Castle was talking about. He talked about
Bessel van der Kolk. You're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He in the military, Josh, the marching and the singing, and it keeps you. I think there's a lot that goes on in the military that helps you feel connected to other people, and to want to try to continue on. And so as veterans, when we're out and you spend all these years focused on that and then it's gone, where do we find that? You know, and we find that at one of Mary's retreats. And you get, you know, you get pumped up again. And there's lots of, you know, lots of examples. So that's what I do. I sleep till I take a nap. I listen to music. I go out and look at nature, and I just try to stay uplifted so that I don't get way down.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is such a good reminder, important reminder of our happiness is not selfish. Like taking good care of yourself is not selfish. It's preserving, and it's helps us give more to others too. Josh.
Absolutely. So you talked earlier on about still serving. It's kind of the slogan that you guys have been
Oh,
using.
yeah, that is Penny Deer's group. I'll give Penny a plug, Art for Vets. She has a group of us that meet at the Zaluga American Legion post in Albany. And she's quite the artist, and she inspires us to do art projects. Sometimes we're like, oh my God. But we, you know, that's another really great group where we all get together, and our artwork is on display at the Women's Memorial in Washington, DC. So, I mean, from a little seed comes a big tree.
Let me just insert that quick story so people who don't know can get the importance of just keep putting yourself out there and connecting, because Penny came to an event where I was speaking in Albany. You were there helping me. She was a little like, what is this group? You know, what do you all do? She was nervous about coming. She came to a retreat. And then her group, Art for Vets, Anne Marie Halterman, another one of our veterans, you all should look up unitingus.org. She started that after coming to a retreat to connect veterans and civilians, just getting art out there to connect us all. And so Penny and Anne Marie, we connected those two, and it just keeps rippling out there. So different veterans, and some of our veterans from Colorado have found out about Uniting Us, and it just keeps spreading. So hopefully a lot of you watching, if you are wondering, how can I get something going where I live? You know, hopefully you all, they can reach out to Chris. You know, you can post your website on our Facebook page, reach out to Josh. A lot of people on our community are happy to share, and ask Josh to ask Chris a couple more questions too. But just there's resources out there if you want to start groups like this in your own community, because we're one community and we're real focused on what we do. But one of our goals with our mission is to help people connect back to themselves, to each other, and then out in your communities. So again, another amazing example of that in action, Chris. Josh, do you have anything else?
Yeah, just to touch on that, Chris, do you have any tips or any kind of insights for the people in our community that might want to do that might want to start looking at building a nonprofit or getting involved with one that's already established in their community? What would be a first step or a tip that you could give to those that are interested in serving?
I would say to connect with somebody who's currently doing that, and maybe you can do that right on email or Facebook or whatever. You can look up all these different organizations, and there's a whole bunch of them out there. You can do a Google search, and most of them you can do live chats and anything that you want. And and I would say, if you want the real, one thing is about being on when we're isolated and being on the computer, but if you want the real connection, I Google your local veterans office maybe, and they would have like the county office, and they like their Saratoga County peer-to-peer in Saratoga. The in Rensselaer now, the program's located at Hudson Valley Community College, and there's just I'm trying to think of all the organizations, Mary, that we connect with when they do one of those meetings every now and then at the Times Union. There's I forget what their name is, but there's a group called the Stakeholders.
Yeah, there's the local, I think if you go to like your county veterans services organizations. Josh, what about you in Buffalo? What have you, I know you've done some peer counseling, peer-to-peer work, and what do you have in your area, or what do you think you could recommend also? Because I know you've done a lot of that.
Yeah, there's a lot in the Western New York, Buffalo, Niagara Falls area. In Buffalo, there's the Veterans One-Step Center, and that's basically exactly what it is. It's a one-step center where you can step in and get all sorts of resources and information on it. Really anything that a veteran may need or want, as far as help for themselves or opportunities to get involved in helping others. So that's a great place here in Buffalo to check out.
And downstate in New York, there's the Giordano Foundation. You can Google that. We've been, Penny has connected with her also.
Right.
There's just, there's a lot of opportunities. It's just, sometimes you're just apprehensive. You don't know what to expect when you go. And I would just encourage people to go. And now there's so much that's on Zoom. All these things that you post, Mary, you can't keep up with everything that everybody's doing on these meetings and things,
Right.
and concerts, and learn to draw, and all kinds of things. So I think just encourage people to be open to trying and seeing what these organizations are like. I mean,
Right.
It's I know what it's like to feel apprehensive and concerned, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen.
I think our own SWS group page is another great place that you can post your questions. What safer environment than to ask questions about, things that you may be apprehensive about. There's so much knowledge out there in this group. People will be more than willing to share.
Up in the Adirondacks, there's a group called Creative Healing Connections. And when you're talking about creativity and stuff like that, we're actually going to be going on a women's retreat this weekend up at the Great Camp Sagamore. So there's lots of and horses, tons of organizations with the horses and the dogs. I have a dog, she's been barking. I love animals too. So there's just so much that's available.
Thank you, Chris, because that's a good reminder for everyone that like you said, Josh, our page and these calls go to on our YouTube page or on our Facebook page. If you look up media, go to videos, and we have probably close to 50 now covering different things. But what you can do beyond that, as Josh said, is put it out there to the group, whether you're on our private Facebook group for participants or on the main page. Put the questions out there, because like you said, the people in this community are so varied, and the interests are so varied, and the professional expertise and the willingness to share is huge. And I'll close us with a brief story of Jamie Trent, one of our first our first veterans who showed up to one of our early retreats. He found us by doing just what you said. He was like, I need to do something. I am too isolated. I'm getting depressed. I've got to get involved in something. And so he just Googled veterans and songwriting. And that was very close to when we first started, and we popped up. So he just took a chance and wrote and just said, I just found you. Do you all need any help? And that was the start of a relationship that, we were very, very early. And I was willing to, try to get Jamie to come volunteer at a retreat, knowing he would also end up writing a song, because that happens. And we know that every veteran can can absolutely benefit from writing a song. But Jamie connected us to, he went to Veterans United, which was an organization that he was familiar with that served veterans. They connected us to Boulder Crest at the very beginning, before Boulder Crest had held any retreats. So you never know what your question can lead to, and just your willingness to say, do you need help? Or, hey, have you heard about this group? Because just like Chris, well, this is a perfect circle for this interview. When I first started and went to this local group called 100 Women Who Care, it's this super creative organization that very streamlined. You put 3 charities in a hat, pull it out. The one whose name gets pulled gets to pitch. The group votes right there who is getting the money that night. And it started with 100 members. So 100 women writing a check for $100, that money went to the organization. And I was one of the first speakers to speak that won. And I won, I believe, $12,000 for Songwriting with Soldiers. I think it was at the year that you came to the retreat. Right. So I had been thanking them. And now Chris's organization just got pulled last month. And the woman who pitched it won. And I'm pretty sure we're close to 200 members. So I think you're going to get a really good donation. But the point being, you never know what your one question or your willingness to show up and just create, connect, and use your strengths.
Yeah.
Well, I think we better wrap this today, but what a pleasure. Thank you both. We'll have more of these. Stay tuned for our calendar. If you have questions for Chris, look up cdwv.org. And pretty soon the ChristopherHouse.org, most likely. Is that right?
Oh, I think it's going to fall under the CDWV.
Okay. All right. Well, we will stay tuned, and we wish you the best. Let people know how they can help in different ways. Josh, keep us posted on what you're doing and get ready for the next interview.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris.
We'll be hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Stay safe.
Okay.
Stay creative. Stay in touch.
Bye-bye.
Bye.